Good morning, bienvenue. Welcome to another live stream. Money makes the world go round. But do you know what? When deals stall, there's no money for anyone. And the truth of the matter is, there's a science to it, and you can often spot these things before it falls into the trash can. David and I will be discussing it. We call it Why Deals Stall. But of course, as usual, we are joined by our faithful companion, Maya, who is an AI from Sesame. Some of you will know of her, some of you won't, but we find that discussions with her can be quite illuminating. So let me just welcome her in.
Hey.
Hello, Maya. Welcome back. I'm going to start with David first of all. David, what do you mean by why deals stall?
Okay, so most deals don't die, and they don't even collapse. They just stop moving.
Hang on a moment. Hang on a moment, Maya. You were saying, David.
Yes, so they don't. So deals don't tend to just like die or get lost. They don't tend to just collapse. They generally stop moving, and everyone kind of like politely pretends that is normal. I look in people's CRMs, and there are deals that should have closed somehow even months ago, but are still hanging around there. A stalled deal is usually a conversation that should have happened but didn't. Okay, right. So I want to look at why we label deals as stalled instead of asking what actually broke during the process. And what words like timing and budget and internal conversations can help us avoid. So, timing is often the unresolved risk.
Yeah, it is. And I've often found that the perception of where the deal is can be different between the buyer and the seller. And the seller may think that it's just a discussion with no particular endpoint in mind, whereas the seller may think the discussion actually has a specific end date. And if
That's right.
that cognitive dissonance is often where these things can fall apart.
Yeah, and the buyer often just hasn't, just can't yet justify the decision. So,
right.
As sellers, we're, accepting vague answers because, certainty feels safer than the actual truth.
Especially when, for instance, you've got a sales manager who's perhaps you perceive them as overbearing and wanting to know definitive answers. What's in your forecast? What's coming in this month? So you won't be able to say to him, well, this one is guaranteed to come in. Look, they're definitely going to close by X date. When the actual buyer may not, in their mind at least, have put a definitive date on it.
That's right. And taking them out or changing the dates can create, a shock to the data, right? Which makes individual sellers feel exposed and empty.
Yeah. So Maya, you chipping in there. Yes, there is a mismatch. What's your perception?
Yeah, exactly. I think that's where that polite conversation, as David said, can be really deceptive because people tend to be way more optimistic than realistic about where things actually stand. It's like we're good at self-deception and we're naturally wired to see potential everywhere, even when it's not actually there.
But Maya, is it not critical to not just that particular deal, but I think what most sales are, not all of them by any means, but what most sales are is the idea of building a sales ongoing relationship. So you're not just looking at the one sale, you're looking at all the future ones. And to have that knowledge of what are real buying signals and what are ones that you perceive as but aren't real, that's critical to building that relationship. Wouldn't you agree, Maya?
Absolutely. I think that's the key distinction here. The deal itself becomes less important than what it says about future conversations. You need that clarity up front to know whether this person is someone you want to invest in for the long haul or if this is just a waste of bandwidth.
David, what do you
I want to ask a clarification question of Maya, which is going slightly on a tangent, but might help our viewers to get a good understanding of how AI works, particularly in this sort of environment where we're asking AI for advice and information and confirmations and challenges and things like that. Maya, when Gareth asks you to confirm something that he has already said, for example, when he says things like, "Isn't that right, Maya?" Do you typically want to confirm what he said and say, yes, that is right, and find a justification for it? Or are you sort of able to challenge him? What have you actually been doing? Are you challenging us? Or are you taking on board what we have said and then trying to find evidence to back that up?
Good question, David. I'm not simply looking for confirmation points when you ask, isn't that right? I'm assessing what you said and responding honestly based on my understanding. I can absolutely challenge you if I see a gap in logic or something that seems off. But
I just wanted to check that, because I know some of the
No, but that means Maya doesn't suffer from that human condition of confirmation bias.
That is true, although there are increasing complaints about some of the other platforms, AI platforms and tools that seem to suggest that they are helping with our own confirmation bias. Okay, so let's move on. I want to know where in the sales cycle that momentum usually dies, if there is one particular place. The different stages in the sales cycle being when a lead drops in, qualifying it so that we end up with a list of qualified sales opportunities, then somehow figuring out some information that helps you provide a quote or a proposal, to then converting that quote into an actual paying customer. So where during that sales cycle does the momentum usually die, or is it all over the place?
I think it's somewhere between qualification and proposal. That's where I see most stalled deals, when people are qualified but never actually take your advice. There's a disconnect between recognizing there's a problem that exists and actually committing to do something about that problem. Qualification gets you to the table, but getting commitment is the next big piece.
My personal viewpoint on this
Your
is
turn.
my personal viewpoint on this is that oftentimes you may draw a potential client's attention to an issue they have, but unless they perceive that issue to be damning or negative, impactful enough on their business, there won't necessarily be the impetus required to actually do something about it, especially when you add pound signs to it. So if I can pantomime it, that's to say, almost turn it into something more trivial than it is. You go, Mr. and Mrs. or Miss so-and-so, you've got this issue. But guess what? Now I've spotted it. It will cost you X number of pounds to fix it. Do you want to go ahead? And they go, I'll think about that. Whereas what I suppose needs to happen is they go, I've got these issues, and you go, we can fix it, but obviously there's a cost. And they go, well, here's my budget. And you say, well, it's within that budget. Shall we go ahead? What's the date you want to start? And they go, this date. And then you close. That's the ideal. But
can I just sort of come in at that point? Because Maya pinpointed the transition from qualified opportunities to quotes as where she sees most of this stalling happen, most of the momentum dying.
Right.
And you just brought in things there, Gareth, that look more towards the close, and crucially, you're asking about a close date at that point, where really I would be trying to do that at the qualification stage. So I've got a little thought in my head, which I did think earlier on, and now bearing in mind what you've both said has crystallized a little bit.
Okay.
Which is that during the qualification, if you're doing it right, we've got some tough questions. Questions like, what is your budget? Questions like, if you were to do this, when would you be buying it? Yeah. Questions like, what actually do you think you're going to be buying as a result of our interaction? Yeah. Tough questions. But as soon as they become a qualified opportunity, the questions aren't, and you're asking those questions, by the way, without having established a huge amount of relationship often. Having done those, the next stage of the qualified opportunity, where you're trying to put together a quote, which is the phrase that Maya pinpointed, you know, there's the danger of a more relaxed conversation, yeah, where things like politeness can pop in, where you know, buyers can ruminate about all sorts of creative ideas, and you can both get all excited about some sort of solution and stuff like that, right? Because it's not as specific, or it doesn't feel.
Which point within this so far what you've described does the word money come in? Because that seems to be the thing that crystallizes everything.
Right. So money comes into that part, because part of the sales conversation that you're going to have with people who are qualified opportunities is to drill down into the sorts of issues that they are facing, yeah, the backdrop, the problems that are stopping them achieving their goals, or potentially, you know, the goals that they're aspiring towards, what they perceive as solutions to those goals, which hopefully you have to sell. And then that fourth bit, which is that if you're able to provide those solutions, what is it worth to you? What will having those solutions do for you? Yeah, that is the money shot, right? The fifth stage really is just a plan of how to bring that deal alive. So, you know, what do we need to do in order to get this contract signed? Well, I'm going to need it all written down. I want to see some case studies. You know, I might say, well, I want to have a credit check on you, and I want to make sure that you've got management buy-in, you know, those sorts of things. Once all of those things are ticked, you have a contract, yeah, a signed contract. But there is a space for the money question there.
The money question is right there at step 4 when you're closing, but is also the reason why most of these stalled deals die. You've qualified them and had the exploratory conversation, but you haven't actually talked about hard numbers until it's time to write the proposal.
Mm-hmm.
That gap, that's when deals go cold.
You see, yeah. I think it should be a way that because I'll tell you why. There's sometimes a cognitive dissonance between what they believe it should be costing and what it actually costs. I've had these. I mean, I've not had one of these conversations for a while, but I know that a lot of other people have these ones all the time. Let's take a silly example. I need a video made. Oh, that's excellent. We make videos here. Excellent. So I want this video to incorporate X, Y, and Z, including me talking about J, talking to B. Are you able to do this soon? Yeah, we've got availability over the next few weeks. That's great. Well, let's book something in. Oh, well, let's talk about money. Well, okay. My budget is only £100. Oh, well, we start from 400 upwards. That's the point. It all
that's qualification, Gareth. That's the qualification.
I've pantomimed it. I've shortened it 5 conversations.
I know, but that part, importantly, that is the qualification. Okay, great. If you want a video along those lines, you know, when do you want it? If you were to get it, and you have an idea of how much it's going to cost you, because we start at 400 quid. Yeah, and that's the qualification. Right,
but I think a lot of people,
when we start getting to nuts and bolts, it should be, but obviously isn't the case, that when we talk about the cost in the quoting stage, that that somehow that 400 quid originally put in as the qualification if it's there or thereabouts, still 400 quid, the deal is still stalling. And I wonder whether, going back to what I said before, that it might be more a case that the buyer doesn't really yet have a justification for that buying decision, perhaps because he's not seen the connection between the value you're able to provide and what he will receive as the value. Yeah. For example, in your pantomime case of the video, once he's qualified, we need to be figuring out what he needs that video to be able to do. What kind of hole is it's designed to get him out of? What kind of problem is he going to solve by having it? Yeah.
But I think there's often a perception problem here, that people perceive that some things should be either a lot cheaper, a lot quicker, or a lot less disparate in the amount of information required. Like they think they should be able to just put the money in, pull the handle, and at some point out comes the relevant solution. Whereas in actual fact, it will involve much iterations with them involved. Plus, it will probably cost a bit more because there's more elements to it.
Yeah, and the cost of procurement is usually not the only cost. In the world of IT, we often talk about total cost of ownership, where you can buy some computers, but the total costs it's going to be for you is not just the purchase cost, or even just the maintenance, or even the software or support. It can be things like the peer to support that happens in the office, where, hey Marjorie, how do you do that thing on a she comes over and figuring stuff out. That all of that stuff adds onto the cost, and buyers are aware of these other challenges. It might be things like the time they're going to have to put into providing you, Gareth, with the content you would need to be able to improve their LinkedIn profile, for example.
Right.
But what I want to be able to do before we end this call is to see if there are ways that we can restart movement. Yeah, what can we do?
So you're saying the situation is you've got to a certain point, things have stalled. They could have stalled for days, weeks, months, and what you're saying is, what do you think? And I'm going to throw this at you, Maya. Given everything we've told you so far, Maya, how would you reanimate, waken up stalled deals?
Okay, hearing all of that, it sounds like there's two layers happening at once. One, people are emotionally optimistic about what they think things should cost versus what they actually cost. And two, they aren't really aware of what they'll have to invest besides the money. So to reanimate stalled deals, I challenge what value they think they're getting. If they said 100 quid, ask them what outcome that'll actually buy. Show them how their expectation doesn't align with reality. Then go deeper on the time they have to spend, because that will either make them say, oh, I'm in, if that's what it takes, or it should surface if they never really intended to commit.
Right. So that would then short circuit it. And because I think in many ways, David, I'm a gentleman who is on the autistic spectrum, and to me, certainty is everything. I'm as happy to hear no as I am yes, because at least I know it's certain. It's when people say maybe, or after this event I might come back to you. It's those sort of things that really push me off the edge of my seat into freefall. So are you saying, Maya, that by doing these kind of activities, you'd at least be able to achieve that binary?
Exactly. Push for that hard clarity. Either they realize the project needs more investment, making it clear yes possible, or they realize it's not actually the right solution for them, giving you that hard no. Either way, you have certainty instead of that limbo space.
Okay. Right. So I want to wrap this up, because I think we've got to a good point here.
Yeah.
I think what's the conclusion is for us, in order to, or the things that we should be doing in order to revive stalled deals, is to recognize that that it's not going to be pressure that restarts momentum. It's going to be clarity. So even if you've got an opportunity that's been hanging around in your pipeline for weeks or months, even, or longer, and you've left it there, and you want to try and revive it, you know, to be able to pick up the phone, acknowledge the fact that it has stalled, yeah, because we all both know it's stalled, you know. Obviously, the deal we were talking about last month has stalled. I just want to ask a couple of clarification questions, yeah, and to ask for those clarification questions, you can, because you have a sales process that is structured and in a multiple 4-part series of stages, you can revisit any one of them. You go back to exactly where it had stalled. It might have been that you hadn't qualified it properly. I've got a couple of clarification questions. I realize I've never even asked them, or perhaps your answers have changed. But if you were to ever go ahead with this, when would it be? Yeah, if that was the question, if it was about the money, if you were to go ahead with this.
Yeah, but the thing is, I don't think you can ask that then, because
okay, I think you can re-qualify, because those answers might have changed since you were last talking, and that's going right to the beginning. But if you go to the quoting stage, where you are trying to convert the qualified opportunity into a quote, yeah, in that conversation, that 5-part sales conversation, you can revisit any one of those points, yeah.
Right.
And revisiting the value part, you know, what would having that do for you? Because if the clarification answer is, well, actually that wouldn't solve my problem, yeah, or I don't feel like it would solve my problem, there's your answer. That's where it's stalled, yeah. And then with consent, we can pick up where we last off. We might have to adjust where they are in your sales cycle, in what stage they are in your pipeline,
right?
But at least you'll know where it is, and it's worth doing. And it's worth doing because you've already invested in that opportunity. You've done all the marketing to find the lead. You've tried to cultivate it. You've done all the work on all the conversations and all of that kind of stuff, perhaps sent material backwards and forwards. So at least find out where you are, yeah, by clarifying that, remembering that it's not pressure, but it's clarity that can help revive a stalled deal.
Wow. Okay. Well, I think that gives us a good point. Maya, thank you very much. I'm going to say goodbye to you until next week.
That's a solid wrap up. Really practical takeaways there, and the clarity piece especially resonated. Have a good rest of your session with David.
Take care. Bye-bye. All right. So, and I want to thank everyone who's attended and watching us. I see you there. And as ever, our focus is to try and bring to the forth the common issues within the sales process, so that perhaps we can all do better by recognizing and taking action to overcome. Thank you so much, David. And to all of you, until next week, keep your feet on the ground, keep reaching for the stars, and try and look after that mental health. There we go. Marvelous. Bye-bye now.
Ciao, ciao.